our music, the clothes we wear, the things in which we believe, the foods we eat, our science and technology, and amusements we love. As different as these are, they all share one thing in common. They're all part of what we call culture. Culture. It's a word we often use when we're talking about ourselves and the many other peoples with whom we share the planet. But what does it mean? What do we really mean when we talk about this or that people and their culture? Well, sometimes people use the word culture to mean the arts, such as painting, sculpture, or music and dance. But the word culture means more, much more than just the arts. When we're talking about anybody's culture, we're talking about their whole way of life. We're talking about everything about them and the lives they lead. We're talking, for example, about their cities, villages, and towns, about the games their children play, about their holidays, festivals, and celebrations. We're talking about the crops they grow, their educational, political, and social systems, and how they raise their families, and everything else about how they live their lives. Experts who study cultures say that all the many different things involved in people's lives, in their culture, can be divided into two parts. One is called material, and the other non-material. The material part of our or any other culture is made up of all the many things or objects in our lives. Things such as our tools and the different kinds of vehicles we use to move from place to place. Things such as the buildings and monuments we erect. Our furniture. And the animals we use. These and all the many other things in our lives make up the material side of our or any other culture. The other side of culture, the non-material part, is different. It isn't concerned with things. Instead, it's made up of our beliefs, ideas, and actions. Of, in other words, what we do and why we do it. Language, or how we communicate with each other. How we behave towards other people. Our religious beliefs and practices. These are all examples of the non-material side of culture. So as you can see, whenever we talk about culture, we're talking about a very complex, a very involved thing. We're talking about everything that makes any people who they are. Everything that binds them together and gives their lives meaning and structure. We're talking, in other words, about all the material and non-material parts of their existence. Parts that are woven together into the complex whole we call life. Needless to say, however, just how people live their lives often varies from culture to culture. Different cultures often have different ways of doing the same thing. Sometimes these differences are minor, and sometimes they're great. But large or small, such cultural differences are often very important to those involved. Take, for example, something as basic as food. In many cultures, meat is an important part of the diet. In other cultures, however, it's rarely, if ever, eaten. Instead, people rely on fruits, vegetables, and grains for nourishment. And did you notice the differences in the clothing worn by people from the different cultures we've seen today? As you would expect, members of different cultures often wear different kinds of clothing. Frequently, what people wear is a reflection of the climate in which they live. In tropical climates, for example, cool, loose-fitting garments are the rule. On the other hand, in colder climates, thick, warm clothing is needed. But climate alone isn't the only thing that influences how people dress. People also dress differently because they have different cultural backgrounds that influence how they dress. In North America, for example, many people think nothing of being seen wearing very little. In many other cultures, however, people, particularly women, dress much more modestly. Muslim women, for example, often keep even their faces covered in public, a heritage from the ancient cultures of the Middle East. Architecture, or the style in which people build their buildings, is something else that's also closely associated with culture. Here, for example, is a mosque in India. Such buildings are typical of cultures in which there are many Muslims. And here, in contrast, is a mission church in Arizona. Its design also reflects the culture and resources of its builders, the early Christian missionaries from Spain to the New World. And what do you think North American culture has contributed to today's architecture? Well, how about skyscrapers? They're about as American as you can get, expressing the bold innovation that's so much a part of the American culture. Language is another area in which cultures vary widely. Many different languages are used around the world. And, just as you would expect, each is the product of the culture in which it is used. Craft, art, and design, these are also strongly influenced by the cultures that produce them. A carved leopard's head from Africa, a Hopi sun ornament from Arizona, or beadwork from Mexico. Each is very different, and each is very much a reflection of the culture that produced it. Well, as we've seen today, there's no simple way to define culture. The word culture has a very broad meaning. A meaning that includes everything about people and how they live. The list of what's part of any culture, any way of life, is endless. Religion, science and technology, recreation. As different as all these are, they and much, much more are all part of the complex parade of things, ideas, and beliefs that make up that complicated thing we call culture.